Welcome back, everyone. It is a beautiful, not so beautiful, 16-degree day. And I'm holding up traffic because I'm trying to let my truck warm up a little bit. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Rivian, all the Rivian driving videos that I just made. Basically, if you don't know, I would highly recommend you go back and at least watch some of them. In fact, I would really kind of insist that you do, because it's important to have any sort of understanding and appreciation for this video. Recently, I drove the Rivian R1T, the quad motor truck, with some friends, and he was gracious enough to let me drive it. And not only that, but he kind of really let me get the full experience. We didn't just go putting around. I got to, punch it on the road and test all the different modes out, and actually drifted a little bit on a sandy, snowy road. So really hopefully the microphone was picking that up. Really the perfect scenario for a car guy to actually, understand what a vehicle's capable of, not just some kind of half-assed review, not based on like an actual driving experience of the vehicle in question. So that was really good. So I was glad to have that experience. So I got a full driving experience of the Rivian, as good as anything basically that I've ever driven, as far as, it was 50 miles probably of all different types of conditions, a little bit of interstate. Actually, we didn't technically go on the interstate with me driving, but all state routes, city streets, all that kind of stuff. So a good enough, gives me a good idea of it. And as you'll see in those videos, we talked all about features and like what a Rivian really is and what it's meant to be. So I won't go into detail about that. What I want to talk about in this video is just kind of the things like, would I buy it? Do I think it's a viable replacement for gas cars? All that sort of thing. And I think in the moment, my short-term answer is no, not in the short term. The biggest reasons for me being, I really do truly use all 6.5 feet of my bed. I'm almost the kind of guy who could really flirt with an 8-foot bed and probably have a good reason to buy an 8-foot bed truck. So, but I don't, right? So anything smaller, that would definitely be a non-starter for me. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from with that. That being said, for a ton of people, the bed size of the Rivian is not going to be an issue. And so I don't want to just write the truck off because of that. And then there's also the separate argument of like, it's just evaluate the technology, not the exact configuration, right? Because there's absolutely no reason you couldn't take what a Rivian is, or a Cybertruck, or any other truck for that matter, take that platform and put a different body on it, essentially, from a manufacturer, but there's no reason they couldn't do that. Extend the wheelbase a little bit if they needed to, all that kind of stuff, and just make a more, utilitarian truck out of it, not so much a lifestyle vehicle. So with all that being said, I think for the things that it really changed my mind on was, not that I was never like anti-EV. Early on, I think I was anti-EV, but as of like the last, 5 years, I should say, I've just been EV neutral. And my opinion on EVs would be, number one, not going to be viable for a good long time. Number two, maybe not viable ever. That would have been my opinion probably 5-6 years ago, even up to like 2 years ago. As technology has progressed and the way things do, I would say now that my opinion is a little bit different. So I actually do now think they will become eventually viable in some, if not most, applications. Will there still be things that are diesel or gas for quite a long time from now? Probably. Like tractor trailers, I think, might be a scenario where it's like they'll struggle to make a tractor trailer truly commercially viable electric for a good long time. I think a hybrid solution would make more sense, there. So like there's stuff like that, right? So I think there's a lot of nuance as far as, what is, when we're talking short term, mid-term, and long term, what the path will be. And then you have to ask the question, like, do you even want a society that goes full electric?
So let's talk about this. So this battery.
So my microphone's just died for tuning back in here.
And how long have we had these on? How long?
Probably an hour, probably. It is cold out, but probably about an hour.
So I'd be curious to know, because I know nothing about this brand of these.
I don't either.
How long they last when it's safe 75, 80 degrees out.
Sure.
and how long they last today. And this,
Sure.
it's like, what is it now outside? It's 12 degrees out, a high of 12.
And it was started at about 5 when we started this little journey.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So you got here
yeah.
around 5 degrees. It's 12 degrees now.
yeah.
So, I mean, there's the reality. Here's a useful tool that people like. They don't think about any negative side of this. It's
Yep.
just something they use every day.
Yep.
And the components that are in this battery, obviously they're lithium batteries.
Yep.
They're going to have, the cobalt and whatever other minerals are in there. That everyone likes to go online and say, well, you own an EV, you're supporting child labor, and I feel so bad for those kids. And I'll be honest with you, I feel bad for them too.
Sure, of course.
I have 3 kids of my own. I would never want to see that happen. But let's look at what's subjectively what's happening. Foreign countries that we can't control are allowing children to work in mining operations that we can't control or regulate because that's their country.
Sure.
They're making minerals that we use worldwide, not just in the U.S., for everything. So when I mean everything, like I didn't know that component, mineral, we'll call them minerals, like cobalt or lithium are used in medicine. I'm like, I didn't know that. So I'm researching all this and learning, and I can't remember off the top of my head what they use them for. But it's not just the minerals that they're digging up are going into a car battery, people.
Sure.
They're going into everything. And I put a bunch of examples on my Facebook, and basically what I'm telling people is do you have anybody in your family that has hearing aids? I do. My dad can hear because of people like them getting those minerals. Hearing aids have lithium batteries. How about somebody in your family has a pacemaker? They're alive because somebody's mined those minerals. If children are being involved in that, that's another issue. It's not the minerals' fault. It's not the battery's fault. It's not the vehicle's fault. It's not the pacemaker's fault. It's the people allowing children to do that kind of labor. I will elaborate on that a little bit. A lot of those people that have families that are doing that mining, from my research, and again, I'm just a mechanic, it's what those families do. They've worked in those mines their whole lives.
Same thing as coal mining in West Virginia.
That's right. It's not the safest, not the greatest. It's not, you can't, it's not a very elaborate life, but that's all they know in their area. That's their livelihood. And they start their kids early. The media tends to make it look like it's this really horrible thing that's killing kids and, we shouldn't be supporting it, when that's all they have for work. So they're going to do that to support themselves and their family, whether we buy anything with a lithium battery or not. It's not going away. So nothing I can do on my level is going to change that. So I just want to put that out there. It kind of drives me insane.
Yeah.
And again, lithium is in everything from medicines to just Google it sometime if you're really concerned about the minerals in a car battery. They're in everything, including the camera that's recording us right now.
Yeah, for sure.
So without people like them, we have not as glorious of components to use in a life, right? Like I'm pretty sure if my dad needed a pacemaker, I'm pretty happy somebody dug up those minerals somewhere.
100%.
So that's kind of where we'll go with that.
And I think that I think my answer to that would have been, I don't necessarily think so, right? But after actually driving one and kind of living with one for the day, minus the charging faux pas, which we go over in the video, and of course range and battery life and all that stuff, like all the things people talk about, but aside from that, the tech itself makes more sense to me now than it did before. So the having the power on tap, I mean, nobody's arguing that, but that's just unbeatable by a gas engine, basically, right? And then the thing that I never really thought about, I always worried about reliability, like, oh, what are you going to do when these things, batteries die out or motor dies? Well, it's kind of the opposite. Modern gas cars are getting so complex, and especially diesels on the DEF, DPF side of things, that they're, we're getting to a point where they're actually becoming the more expensive things to fix, maybe. And here's why I say that. The Rivian battery pack is warranted to 180,000 miles, 8 years, which is like kind of a crazy warranty. And even if it wasn't, a battery pack's, 15, 20 grand, which is a ton of money. But if you compare that to a engine and transmission, which in even 180,000 miles, you could definitely hit at least one of those on your average car. So, that's always a potential. Then, you're going to wind up with probably an $8,000 10-speed transmission rebuild, and a modern engine in practically any car is going to be 8 to 15 grand. And that's for a gasoline setup in like a half-ton truck. If you bump up to like a 1-ton with a diesel engine, I mean, the emission systems alone are 5, 6, 7 grand. The engine itself is probably 20 grand. replacement cost, and then the transmission's that same 8 to 10 grand, let's say. And I'm just ballpark figures, but very expensive components. I mean, as they get more complex, they're getting more expensive as well. It's not like the old days where you could rebuild a 4L80 transmission for, $3 grand. Today, you can still rebuild one for like $3 grand. And, in and out, R&R, done, go home. It's just not the case anymore, right? Or for better or worse, that's not a thing. So you got to factor in the price. And this is why the MSRP is so high also on newer ICE vehicles as well, internal combustion engine. So, with all that being considered, I guess I kind of thought about it financially, and I'm like, okay, well, the numbers are not as actually different as you might think from that perspective. And then when you go one step further than that, it's like, if they're willing to warranty that battery to 180K, I bet part of the reason they're doing that is because they just want to make sure that they can sell these things and give people the peace of mind. It probably doesn't make total financial sense to warranty those battery packs that long. But if they're going to do that, it's got to be at least pretty darn reliable to, say, 120, 150. Because if it didn't last that long, then there's no way that they would be able to warranty it for 180 and not put themselves out of business. If they were all breaking at 100K, let's say, they'd be replacing every single battery pack. It wouldn't make sense, right? So they must have done testing to prove that in all different types of conditions, these battery packs can hold up for a pretty darn long time. And a couple of things, right? Most people aren't driving their car of any sort to 180,000 miles. And for the people that do, again, they're either going to have replaced a major component, or they understand the fact that they're getting to that mileage where they probably will have to relatively soon. And it would be the same thing with the battery pack, right? If you bought a used EV, you would just say to yourself, all right, I'm probably gonna have to replace this relatively soon. So, it'll hurt the used value, but so does 180K on a regular car. So I don't really think that that's like a huge concern of mine as far as just kind of the technology adapting on a price scale. And then I always worried about the complexity aspect of it. Oh, it's got all these electronics and this and that. Well, they do, but they don't. And I say that because they have fancy screens, but you have an LED TV at home that lasts 10, 15 years if you want it to, right? Most people will upgrade. And I think you'll find that there's upgrade packs for the physical hardware on these cars down the road. But even if there's not, there's 10, 15 years right there. They're going to be fine, presumably. And then at that point, you put a bunch of miles on it, and you might want a new one anyway. But even if not, other than those screens, there's 4 electric motors and a giant battery and some wires. There's actually not as much complexity. So a 10-speed transmission, for example, which is in a lot of cars, it's essentially 2 4-speeds put together from the sense of the amount of clutch packs, and there's a lot of solenoids, and there's just a lot of computer controls going on. It probably arguably has twice the complexity of a 4-speed transmission, and it also has features that didn't exist. So there's a lot of complexity there, and they're great. They do a lot of good stuff, but it is a heavily mechanically sensitive component that's very expensive. The engines are kind of the same deal, right? Direct injection's a little more complex with the high pressure fuel pumps, and you've got just more compression. You're making more power per cubic inch on most engines, and then you add in turbochargers and variable valve timing and cylinder deactivation. There's all these technologies that add complexity to an engine and can reduce its long-term reliability. And it won't necessarily do that, but it can do that just because they're things that are adding complexity. And from a pure engineering perspective, all else being equal, when you add variables to a system, you decrease its chances of being reliable. When you add parts, you stack up the tolerances of all those parts from a size perspective, from a material science perspective, from a fitment, user error of installing, all these factors stack up more and more and more, and then you wind up with a less reliable system. Now, of course, over the years, they've increased the tolerance on parts and been able to, manufacture things more cheaply but with better quality. So they've fought that, but at the end of the day, if you went back to 20-year-old technology and manufactured it with today's manufacturing methods, it would, with the right materials and taking lessons learned over all the years, you would wind up with a more reliable product. It wouldn't be as efficient, or as powerful, but it would be more reliable, right? That's just the way that it is, because it's less parts. So anyway, not to begrudge that point, but EVs do have a lot less moving parts. So it kind of got me thinking, like, okay, reliability wise, like, I think there's an argument to be made that just the inherent design is actually a lot more reliable, just from an engineering perspective. And I, of course, I mean, the name of the channel is tongue in cheek, but I am an engineer in my work life. So, I do kind of see both sides of this, electronic and mechanical systems. And, there's pluses and minuses to each. The miles and miles of wiring in an electric car has its own flaws, right? If the wire's too thin, they can chafe on things. They can start fires. They can, short out. They can corrode, blah, blah. I mean, all these things can happen, right? Your box frame on your gas-powered car can get salt in it and corrode out and crack the frame. I mean, there's just a million and one ways something can fail. So there's no foolproof design for any vehicle of any sort, but we're just trying to look at pluses and minuses here. But at the end of the day, I guess I just learned that it is more viable than I thought, even today, but I think especially with the right charging infrastructure, and then better battery technology on top of the right charging infrastructure. The weak point of electric cars, which Walt said in that video, and I think I wouldn't have believed him before, but I believe it after kind of living the day in the life, is the charging infrastructure. That's the weak point. The cars are roughly fine. Yes, they kind of need to charge faster for towing applications, and they need more range. Like, I get that, but you can work around that with the right charging system. Without the right charging grid, it's like, it gets tough if your superchargers are down and you're jumping from place to place, and the cost of certain superchargers are kind of high. So, all those factors come into play. But I do think over time, those are things that you can overcome. And again, we go into detail on all these topics in those videos, so try to watch them. I know people are going to want to comment on this at various points I'm talking about, and that's okay. But if I say to you in the comments, please go watch this video, just don't be offended. I'm not doing that to be a jerk. It's just because we talked about it in depth, and he really knows what he's talking about. So I just want to give it a fair shot. So would I buy an EV after all this is said and done? The one problem I have, and this is where I'm a dumb redneck, but I thoroughly enjoy the sound and feel of an internal combustion engine. I also thoroughly enjoy the sound and feel of the electric motors, believe it or not. They have a sound. They actually have a feel, more than you'd think. Like, they're not dead. Like, everybody thinks, I thought, oh, it's an electric car, it's just like dead inside. It's actually not. It has some character. It's way different, but it has character. Like, it gives you the grin factor. You drift that thing on a snowy road, it makes you smile, right? It always does. But I got in the old freaking 05 Chevy here with the 6-liter, making literally half, or frankly almost only a third of the power that thing makes, and left his driveway with the ass end of the truck sideways, and my dumb redneck interior in my heart, it put a smile on my face. I enjoyed that. I'm just so used to vehicles that are, have a gas engine, and I'd like to think if I drove that for 10-15,000 miles daily that I would begin to it would fade into the past, in the same way that somebody who drove a horse and buggy, right, gets in a Model T and maybe eventually forgets and doesn't care that he doesn't have a horse. It's like, that's definitely possible, but I don't know. I wonder if that guy still missed his horse. Horse and buggy traveling around. Maybe not. But I just wonder if he did. So it's a change. But the cool thing is, I can say I am totally not against it. Like, I think I could definitely adapt, especially with the right charging network. I'm not against the concept, and I definitely wouldn't be like bored to death in one. They're super fun in their own way. I just think I would need to own both. I do think I would still, after a period of time, want to hop back into my internal combustion engine vehicle. So I could be wrong on that, but that's just what my gut says. The linear acceleration of an electric vehicle, that was the most intoxicating part of it, and the coolest part. It just sets you back, right? But like my car, for example, just being able to shift gears and you're really driving it. And not that you're not driving an electric vehicle, because you totally are. That's kind of a misconception when people are like, oh, but like you're not driving it. You're driving it. You're driving it. But it's just, it's different. It's different. Not even different in a bad way. It's just different in a way that I'm not used to. And in a way that I think would make me miss the thing that I am used to. So, it's hard to say. But very cool experience. With that being said though, super cool experience, super cool vehicle. 12 out of 10 would recommend if you don't take a ton of long trips and you just want probably one of the best lifestyle kind of just general utility vehicles in the market, you know, go pick one up for yourself because they are a really great purchase.